We are, as we have been, we're streaming video from the meeting. There's video conferencing in Culpeper District and the Lynchburg District. We had an issue earlier, and for those that are watching, you should be able to go to the Route29solutions.org, and under the heading for the May 8th meeting, see a little note for meeting materials, and you will see the materials we're going to be reviewing today. We're kind of going to walk up to a couple of them, but the materials are out there on the website. Also, for the people watching and listening, we had a little murk with our internet here this morning. If it should decide to hiccup again and go down, we'll post a note on the website to let you know, but we're also going ahead, in addition to our normal recording, Mr. Hatter is videoing the meeting for us. So at worst, we'll post the Lou Hatter version of our meeting on the website. So hopefully everything will go well and we won't have any issues. Before we get started, just as a note of safety, if for some reason we should need to leave the room, we go out the door, down the steps, out the front door, hang a left, and keep going until somebody tells us we're in good shape. There are restrooms out the door on this floor to the right, and I believe some on the first floor as well in the same general location. There's a couple of overflow rooms available if other members of the public should come, that they could also watch the meeting on video conferencing. So I think we've covered the necessary starting points. As we have, for the benefit of people who are watching or anyone here that may not have been here before, although it seems like I've seen all of you here before, it would be good to go around and introduce ourselves, I think. I'm Philip Chuquette. Ed?
Ed Craig Hill, representing the Lynchburg Chamber.
I'm Christina Hoffman, representing the Charlottesville Regional Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Hal Duggan from the Warrington Town Council.
He's the mayor of Warrington. New mayor of Warrington.
I'm James McMarr, representing the Elmo County Board of Supervisors. I have one administrative.
That's right.
We have in our attendance 4 other supervisors: Liz Palmer, Ann Malik, Garrett Sheffield, and Diane McKeel, and so I need to call this meeting to order.
We're happy to be present for the meeting of the Board of Supervisors.
I'm Kristen Sakis. I am the chair of the MPO, which I'm representing here, but in the absence of Satya Puja, I'm also representing City Council with a separate voice, and I'll let you know which voice I'm speaking with.
My name is Fred Shanks, and I'm representing Danville City Council.
Fred.
Scott Pollard with Southern Environmental Law Center.
Turner Perro, Lynchburg City Council.
Thank you very much. I think that after we're finished, we should all attend the next meeting of the Board of Supervisors. A few others that are here: Ben Manel, who leads our technical team; John Lynch, who's the district administrator of the Culpeper District; Chris Winstead, the administrator of the Lynchburg District; Quentin Elliott, the chief deputy commissioner; Susan Maines, who continues to hold down many jobs that we are giving her. And I have failed to introduce you to Ken Ruff at every meeting, by golly. And Ken is the guy that's making sure our streaming's working, making sure that the podcasts are being collected and put out on the web. And Ken and I worked together a lot when I was at VDOT, and I probably tended to overlook him then more than I should, and say thank you for everything you've been doing for us. Ken has wired everything up that's made this work, and that's not something that happens accidentally. It takes a lot of work.
And has been very responsive to requests for tweaks and changes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'll give you our public comment update. As far as the website goes, or comments submitted through the website, I think there were only 3 more in the last 2 weeks. Allison,
Yeah.
I overlooked Allison DeTonk, our CTV member from the Culpeper District, who has been here at every meeting. Thank you again, Allison. I think there were only 3 additional ones. That brings a total of 154. And still, for the most part, it's split between support for Places 29 and support for the Western Bypass, with a string of other comments. Nothing really has materially changed as far as the written comments that have been submitted. At our last meeting, we had 31, I think it was, views live streaming. As of this morning, 155 people had watched the YouTube production of meeting 3. And just to recap, meeting 2, there was about 80 that watched live, 212 views, and I'm still amazed that in meeting 1 there were 600 some people that watched live and 484 views. All I think, even at 30, the fact that 30 people took time to watch a meeting that was being streamed live says something about the value of doing this and making what we're doing available to the public, and that 155 people, I presume, didn't watch it on YouTube by accident. Just further demonstrates the importance of this process that we've kind of trailblazed, and Deputy Commissioner Elliott has taken back to the CTV and said, you know what, we're going to do this at the CTV, and I think that's awfully nice. That's a good thing to do. We're going to cut to the chase kind of quick this morning. As I advised the panel, the Secretary has asked me to bring a recommendation to the May CTV meeting, which is on Tuesday next week here in Charlottesville. It's at the DoubleTree, and we're going to do that. I'm going to step through a package for you this morning of a draft recommendation, and I'm going to kind of take my time to go. Not that I can talk any faster than I do anyway. I'm going to take my time to work through that. Given us basically the whole meeting to step through this and then to have some discussion and see where we are at the end of that. With that, this is a little different than what you might see if you're watching on the web. You see one poster that has all of the projects on it. We're going to build up through them a little bit sequentially here in the room. Thank you. Before we start, I have reminded myself of what we were told a lot, and I just want to remind us again. I know everybody comes at this with a lot of history and different thoughts, but the charge we were given by the Secretary, he said, standing right about here, that we are trying to fix those 2 things. His definition of those 2 things was to start addressing mobility through the corridor and congestion in the corridor. So keep that in mind as we talk. Let's go ahead to the first post. This is sort of part 1 of what I believe makes sense as an important part of our recommended package. And the poster you have at your seat is the full recommendation. I was just building it in these boxes at the bottom. There are 4 projects that are currently in VDOT's 6-year improvement program. The Best Buy ramp, the Hillsdale Drive extension, a piece of the Hillsdale Drive extension, the Route 29 widening, and the adaptive signal timing improvements. Those projects currently have a little shy of $19 million allocated to them in the 6-year program. To finish those 4 projects, you need about $43 million. In other words, for $43 million, you could fully fund the Best Buy ramp with an additional $6 million, fully fund Hillsdale with an additional $16, fully fund the Route 29 widening, which needs to be extended down to Polo Grounds now, that's $18 million, and fully fund the adaptive signal timing improvements, which covers 19 traffic signals for $3 million. And I am recommending that those 4 projects that are currently in the 6-year improvement program be fully funded for construction. Next, there are some projects that have been recommended previously, and I'm going to step through those. The first is an extension of the Hillsdale Drive extension from Hydraulic down to Holiday, and now this northern piece here, as most of you know, or all of you know, is already in place. That's existing Hillsdale Drive. So by adding this piece and funding it for $10 million, in addition to what we are funding up in the first package, we'll build out Hillsdale Drive. So I'm recommending that we do that. Ken? I'm also recommending that we fully fund the Berkmar extension that would take it all the way up to town center. We had some discussion, and I gave some thought to, well, maybe we should fund just a bridge over the river. Maybe we should wait for developers to fund the rest of it. And my current feeling is that we should fully fund Berkmar. And if at some point in the future somebody wants to build a piece of it, that's a gain, and that's certainly great. So with adding Berkmar and with what we have talked about on Hillsdale, we would have fully funded for construction both Hillsdale as well as the Berkmar, and whether you want to refer to them as parallel roads or whatever name you want to give them is fine by me. That's what we would have done.
Is that a 54?
54 million. So 10 and 54 million. The next one, and I think this is very important, and we will talk about this in a little bit more detail. I'm recommending that we fully fund grade separation of the intersection at Rio Road. And that is 81 million. Does that say 81 million?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. That is $81 million. That's a little more than the amount we talked about before, because I've asked our team, we've spent a little bit more time looking at it just a little more carefully, remember this is very early, making a little bit more allowance to be sure that there's money in there for utility relocations and for things that we need to do in a way that allows us to deliver this with minimum disruption and also to make some allowances for some treatments, for some aesthetic treatments around the grade-separated intersection. And we will be spending a little bit more time on this further along.
Bill,
Yes.
wasn't that $36 million last meeting?
No, it was 70, I think.
Oh, 70
to 70.
Okay.
Yeah, 60 to 70. And we just took a little more look. That's been a little more
not
conservative. Yeah, it's been a little more
That's not
conservative. So, in addition to the 6-year improvement plan projects, we're recommending a construction program that totals about $145 million in addition to the 43 that it takes to fully fund those 6-year improvement plan projects. Ken? The next piece of the recommendation, and I believe this is important, is not to fully fund for construction, but to fund for, in VDOT language, preliminary engineering, which means the early look and studies that are necessary to see what would be required to deliver the grade separation at hydraulic. But whereas recommending fully funding for construction RIO, I'm recommending just funding preliminary engineering for the hydraulic grade separation. Hydraulic is in the heart of the, if you look at those accident zones that we looked at previously, sort of in the heart of that, but hydraulic and the 250-29 interchange are also closely related. I think it's going to take some time to work through that and study it. Kevin, you can have my chair. Kevin, always give your chair to the railroad guy. Railroad guy. Railroad guy. Yeah. That's the term. So I'm recommending $10 million for that preliminary engineering. This kicks us over the $200 million mark just a little bit, but I've thought a lot about this additional train for the Lynchburg to DC line. And the reason I gave Kevin my chair is because Kevin really took a hard look at what it may cost to deliver another train set to Lynchburg. And I can tell you that the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, with funds that they already have available to them, is working on this pretty hard. But a train set in round numbers is about $20 million. And I'm recommending that we fund 25% of a new train set, or $5 million. And that, I believe, from everything I understand, would allow DRPT to get a little even earlier start on bringing another Amtrak train to Lynchburg. When you total all that up, that's a package of $203 million. So for $203 million, we could fully fund projects that are already in the 6-year improvement program. They're there because they went through a process with the MPO and with VDOT and the CTV. Fully fund those and chalk them up as done. Recommending $145 million construction package that includes finishing Hillsdale, all of Berkmar, and the grade separation at RIO. $10 million to start to take a look at hydraulic, and $5 million for almost said light rail. That's 2 years ago. As a down payment, if you will, to help procure this other train set. This Lynchburg additional line is about $75 million. So Kevin has some other work to do, but we would be, I think, wise in the interest of mobility to do that. That is, this poster is the one you have in your packets, and this poster is what is posted on the website. All we did was step through it piece by piece, so I don't want anybody to think that we're looking at something that's different than anyone else has looked at. Now, where do these projects come from? I mean, if you think about, hold on just a minute, but if you sit and think for just a moment, these projects aren't something that we created, and it's not the first time they've been thought about. Again, the projects really come from you. I mean, the 6-year improvement plan projects, still say plan, program, the 6-year improvement program projects have obviously come through the process that projects need to go through. They come from the MPO, they're part of the constrained long-range plan. They've been funded partially by the CTD, and they're included in places 29 as well. If you see that a lot of these projects are included in places 29. It's the same for the rest of them. They have they either are part of plans that have been prepared in the past, or plans that are currently being considered. Berkmar and hydraulic are actually carried in the tip as illustrative projects, and that just simply means there are projects that are included in there but are not funded. By funding them, we give the MPO the ability to say these meet the test for fiscally constrained projects, because a plan can't be fiscally constrained if it has no source of revenue. So this is just another way of looking at that package that tells you where these projects have originated. I want to take just a little bit of time to step through RIO and build on some of the things that we saw 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we looked at some drawings that really were at hydraulic, because that's what we happened to model. We've taken the last couple weeks to do the same thing for RIO. Ken? The top picture, this RIO, the intersection is just off the top right in this picture. So this is, as you are approaching from the south, the existing RIO intersection. The picture on the top is as it is today. The rendering on the bottom is as it will exist after the grade separated project is complete. And as you see, it's not a bigger footprint than what's out there today. Ken, go ahead and show the next one. Now this is backing off a little bit, just so you still see. We were looking down here in the other picture. This just shows how this extends up to the grade separated intersection, where local traffic has all of the turn lanes that are available to local traffic today would be available to local traffic in the constructed scenario. If there's 2 lefts now, you have 2 lefts in this scenario as well. Ken, this is a little closer look at the intersection itself, where you see through traffic moving through underneath the deck. The local traffic has the same number of lanes available for the same movements that they currently have today, from 29 as well as Rio. There's the existing situation today on the top. Now the next one, we're just going to look at this in a little bit bigger view. I hate blocking anybody. In a little bit bigger view. Now that is what a grade separated intersection would look like at Rio. The way it could function, for pedestrians. Obviously, an example of the way it could be treated aesthetically. I know localities want to have a lot of input into how things are planted, but these are examples to show you that within our estimate, this doesn't have to be a block of concrete. It's dropped into 29. Now, why spend so much time talking about Rio? The other projects that we've recommended definitely improve the corridor, the total movement of traffic and congestion in the corridor. The Secretary's charge also included to begin to address mobility through the corridor. And you can't do that unless you take a look at something in the corridor on 29 that works with those other projects, to make them effective. And if you look at the next picture, Jane, we really spent a lot of time on modeling. You asked us about modeling and numbers. And there are a lot of them. There are different ways of analyzing the main line, different ways of analyzing the intersections. But in trying to explain something as simply as possible for Rio, if you look at where that intersection operates today, it's not very good for local traffic or through traffic. It's not very good for anyone. And it is, now these are pictures, but pictures based on some analysis, okay? So it's not like, oh, let's make this line look this way, let's make that one look that way. Not that anybody's ever done that before, but trying to illustrate what's behind the numbers. The level of service at that intersection is decreasing and will continue to decrease if nothing is done to it. Now, people have their own opinions about what is and is not good for businesses. I'll tell you this, there's not a case study anywhere in the country that says this is in the best interest of a business. And in spite of what anybody else may think, I have some idea of what it means to say business and what businesses are, and that's not good. With the grade separation of Rio, as you've seen it, first looking at local traffic, people that would still want to use that to access local businesses, in about the year that could be delivered, it gets dramatically better. Why? Because all the through traffic is out of there, is out of that intersection. The local traffic has all the turn lanes available that they have today, available to them then, and sure, that'll get a little worse over time because you expect your community to grow and build, and you want this to happen, right? You want more people growing and coming in and out of your businesses, so that's not bad. And during the peak hour, this is during the peak hour, you don't want your real estate empty in the peak hour. You want people using it, so that's a good thing. For the folks going through, they're really not caring too much about this. I mean, all impedance has been removed from the folks going through this intersection. So for through traffic, they kind of bump from not good to kind of I don't care because I've got a free shot here. Now, clearly, they're coming from a place where they're mixed in with traffic, and they're eventually going to be merged back into traffic, but that's nothing new. So this is a microcosm look at all of this space between this line and this line is all benefit that accrues to local traffic. The big space is all benefit that accrues to through traffic. And if you parse out all the numbers about what's the delay in traffic signal, or what's the volume on Hillsdale, and what's the volume on Berkmar, and what's the volume on 29, if you want to say and answer the big so what, this answers the so what. And it's why I believe that taking this first step to grade separating RIO, fund it, watch how it works in combination with all of the other projects is more than just casually important. It's important not only to meet our charge, does that mean we're good? Okay. The internet's still good? All right. Okay. It means we begin to address mobility through the quarter. I would like to go back to, if we can. Well, do you think we'll be able to? Okay. Ken never rattles. For those of you that know the area, which I presume is all of you, if you wanted to start from the south for a minute, in terms of how a parallel roadway could function, you could get on Hillsdale, you could drive to Rio, you could use the grade separated intersection now that doesn't have any of the through traffic in your way to access Berkmar and drive all the way to town center or to the airport. Now, I can tell you that nobody can tell you how much traffic exactly that will take off of the main line, because it's going to be largely driven by behavior over time. But will people use it? Yeah. Everything I know in my experience says people will use it. And if you do that and couple it with this grade separation at Rio, you've done something measurable to improve the value of this corridor, not only for mobility, but the value of this corridor for the properties that surround it.
Oh,
Yes.
question on the parallel roads. Is there anything in the future to prevent them from being congested? Is there any kind of limited access to those for people going through, so it won't be 15 stoplights?
There is, the Department of Transportation, VDOT has access management policies that should be used by VDOT and by the county to manage growth as it occurs on those local roads. Now, you know, those roads also serve a different purpose than the main line, and they need to be able to continue to serve that purpose because it's important. Also, as local traffic uses those roads, it frees up capacity on. What we're really doing, in a sense, is adding capacity offline a bit. A different kind of capacity in terms of the kind of streets or roads those would be, but we're still adding capacity.
I might add, I was talking to Ann Malik after the last meeting, and the Burkmar Road area is in our rural area, so it's not zoned appropriately for development. And the John Warner Parkway is a limited access parkway. There's no development on it. It goes through a park.
Go to the first poster just for a minute. Absolutely.
So you have reason to believe that the best use of the property after this is built will remain rural?
I don't know the future. Philip, may I ask Ann to respond to that? Would it be
Sure.
okay?
Okay.
She knows more about this than I.
Okay.
I think since it is a greenfield now, we have every opportunity to make those access management decisions that came late to the process with our existing built environment, but we could have those parallel roads that are advantage to it to keep the free flow of the connected.
I guess, and I understand what you're saying, and you represent the district now, and we're dealing with roads that are supposed to lead us way into the future. I don't see that section. I've got real problems with that part of this. Everything else looks great to me. But with that section opening up there, I don't think the Burkmar,
The one down on the right.
North of
the
here.
entire Burkmar crossing the river. My whole issue is the best use of that land will become commercial, and even with access management plans, congestion and traffic will be there, whether they use the access management plan or not. I have little faith that rezoning is going to occur to allow that to go commercial, because that is the highest and best use of the property, and that will increase the tax values of the properties in Albemarle County. My issue is instead of trying to get the traffic through, that section is actually creating more traffic, which is going to, I don't care how you look at it, it's going to add more traffic to the local roads, including the bypass, including the 29 cars. And I would love to see any figures that y'all have generated that shows otherwise.
Okay, just one more.
Add one thing, and then I'll be quiet. This is not in our growth area now, and that's a really important distinction because we've been very, very careful about maintaining our boundaries.
I understand, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I understand that, and you were definitely serving the public well. But that's not to say you're going to be there in that position on the board of supervisors for the next 60 years. And this solution should be.
Okay. Now, I hear you. Would you have a suggestion for?
Well, you know, and I know this one getting no traction, but if you take the $54 million, add it to hydraulic, you're at $64 million worth of funding. You're just shy of being able to build another red separation. That would be phase one of the project that would carry that all the way through the car. I mean, it seems to me the most logical thing would be funding the hydraulic intersection, grade separator. That gives you the first phase of the full several phase project. There will never be funding to do the whole thing at one time. No.
I agree with those comments completely. But if you've got a limited access or more extended, then what's the difference between that and a northern leg of a bypass? That's basically where the bypass route could have continued forward. So you build a bypass around the northern section of the US 29 corridor that's being widened already, and you leave out the middle section. So to me, it just doesn't seem logical to put that in place.
You know, you're right, there's no crystal ball, and I'm definitely not going to be on the Board of Supervisors in 60 years. But it's interesting what you said about a bypass, because we're thinking of these parallel roads as bypasses, and it will take it on down to Rio, which is why I think we're talking about all roads leading to Rio, what to do about Rio. It effectively is a parallel road that comes all the way down. So if there are some businesses on it someday, if we're willing to loosen up our rural area, which is, there's a philosophy of not doing that, I don't think it will impact negatively what we're trying to do here. It is basically a northern, it is basically a bypass, but nearer in and serving further north to get it away from all that commercial area. It's on 29.
Makes a lot of sense to link a midpoint bypass, like what's in the plans, up with that. That even crosses the old the right of way that was purchased.
Kristen?
If anybody wants to address that specifically, I'm not. So
Go ahead.
asking permission to
No,
change.
go ahead. Yep.
First of all, just as the MPO staff here, I just really want to say that I appreciate you looking to those documents that have come through that process. I think that, you know, both at the federal level and at the state level, there's a real commitment to local planning in the context of regional and national planning for roads. And I think that this really respects both of those as a way to move traffic in and out. There was one piece, though, that is in the MPO documents, or at least a bigger version of it is, that we thought was in all of the models up to today, and suddenly today it's not, which is the transit piece.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and that's what, $1.5 million? Is there a reason that didn't make this cut?
Well, I think that there will be certain activities that that will need to continue to go on through normal processes and normal funding. You know, what else isn't in here is eliminating other traffic signals or left turn lanes. Because at the end of the day, I think those are things that the localities, VDOT, need to continue to pursue together. I'm not saying that either transit or eliminating left turns is not important. I believe, at least coming into this meeting, I believe those are things that need to be wrestled to the ground, however they may be, through the established planning and funding process. So it's not dissing anything by any stretch of the imagination at all. There's a lot to consider. There's a lot to consider. There's more than one way to get at things. I've tried to take all the input I've gotten and digest it in the frame of what Secretary Lane said, realizing that it has to get through the constrained long-range plan process and be funded by the CTB. There's a lot of history here in those first two boxes that say to me, quite honestly, that there's no reason not to do this. I can't find a reason not to do this. Now, there may be a bias for some reason that somebody doesn't want to do something, but and I'm certainly not here to tell Charlottesville or Albemarle County what's good for you, but from a mobility point of view, from a safety point of view, from the future of that corridor's point of view, there's no reason not to do these projects. And to only do what's easy is about the biggest cop-out I could ever think of. I mean, it's easy to say, well, you know, let's change bottle tops just because we know we can do it. That won't get it for me. So I hear what everybody's saying, and I guess, to me, based on everything I've heard, I look at that and think, that's something that MPO can get their hands around, includes a project in the corridor, and not just a small one, but includes an important project in the corridor that can be funded and can get substantially moved along during our time frame, while we use some money to do some hard thinking about a time outside of our time frame. That maybe results in doing something, maybe doesn't. I don't know. But you can think about it. I think what's going to happen when you start thinking about hydraulic is you'll say, there's a lot of stuff that has to work right together here to make it happen. But I think it's important to start that look. Ed, and then Christine.
If she was first, go ahead.
You actually were a smidge ahead.
Well, I would like to just go back to this map that everybody's seen, and I think, certainly a lot of good work's done, and recommendations, since, I have no vote here, but for you, the MPO and VDOT to look at, is one, your biggest hot spot. I want to back up first and say I agree with what Fred and Turner had said earlier. So I'd back up and look at the hot spot, and my recommendation is, personally, to use the taxpayers' money in the wisest manner for U.S. Highway Route 29. I would concede for a local project that an MPO Charlottesville's on 6-year plan, fully do the Hillsdale Road. It's in the hottest bracket. That would help the accident situation. So I think the Rio Road high build, y'all did a marvelous job. I keep hearing the word distractions and disruptions for businesses. You're going to get disrupted. It's going to be a lot of disruption. It's construction. You're retrofitting. It's going to happen. But the way the VDOT can do it, they can do it. I know they can do it. I've seen it. That's what I do. They can do it in a manner that it will be not as painful, I think, as people think. So the Rio Road is good. I back up in the hot zone where all the accidents are is, agree with these gentlemen that the hydraulic road, and it's a fiduciary responsibility to hit the hot spots and the accident spots. The worst area is hydraulic, worse than Rio. And we're talking about numbers that we can't project, which you can't, about how much traffic will or won't be on the Barkmar. And we're talking about what's happening now, or what's going to happen later, yet to be seen. So nobody can tell me, for the type of money you're talking, the capital outlay for you, we're talking about long-range, big investments. To put that kind of money on something that's an unknown, that when a lot of us are not in these positions, and you're talking about the money, we all know what's going to happen with property when that road gets built. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. We can't project that. So if we're going to put that kind of money in there, and you can't tell me that you're going to guarantee me to move traffic through US 29, because that's what this meeting's about. I would back up.
But it's not all it's about.
Well, I understand, but just summing down, we're here to invest the money on US Highway 29 to move traffic. I'd drop back in the hot spots, and I would move the hydraulic road intersection, maybe phase it to show the public. Suggestion would be to do Rio first, show the public that VDOT, and I have all the faith, because I've seen it happen, that you can do it just like you said. It's not going to be as disruptive as people think, and it's not going to take up the extra property, et cetera. And then you can drop back and better plan for hydraulic. Gives you more time, and you'll learn something doing Rio, so when you do hydraulic, it's tougher. You'll have learned a great deal from Rio to put the use on hydraulic. So I just like to propose that for consideration.
Well, I respect that opinion a lot, and Turner's and Fred's given this a lot of thought. And I think hanging too heavy a rock around hydraulic ends up with nothing. And I think, I'm not presuming what the MPO would do, but I think. And to end up, and that would be a bad end. I think we are addressing fiduciary responsibilities to the present day and to the future that are important. I've considered how this network might operate with the McIntyre Road interchange, John Warner Parkway, Hillsdale, Great Separated Rio, and Orkmar, and I can play that out in my head to a future time that says that adds value with Rio, with the Great Separated intersection at Rio, that adds value. And Rio happens to be the one that connects them together, which is not the only reason, but a large part of the reason of why I believe Rio is important. I also believe, for a lot of reasons, that it must be delivered nearly flawlessly. And I know VDOT can do that, because I know what VDOT can do. It would take a continuation of this kind of dialogue, so people aren't being told what's going to happen, but participate in how it's going to be happen, or at least understand. The other thing that I really think is important, to try to see ahead to the future, is that if we let this corridor deteriorate, we let the corridor deteriorate, I know who the losers are. And that's everyone. That's not the way to unite sides that are different. The way to unite sides is not, let's make everybody a loser. I don't believe that's not a lot of fun. It is a lot of money. It's a lot of money to invest. If you look at 6 million, 3 million, 18 million, and 81 million, that's a lot of this investment going directly in the corridor. And I feel good about it. I feel good about that. I think the investment, and trust me, the investment for the Lynchburg train isn't on here just as part of some checklist exercise. Well, let's be sure we get some money, let's make everybody happy. I think it's important. I mean, this train has been wonderfully successful, and if the VDOT team can kick a little money over to the DRPT team to advance that work, I think that's meaningful. And I know there are things in here that are asking a lot of everyone. Christina?
So, with your looking to the future, I think that knowing that from the beginning of this meeting, we said a bypass is going to happen one day, and it'll probably be a 54-mile bypass, not, the bypass we were initially considering. And I know that's not discussed at this meeting, but thinking to the future, I think it's a mistake to spend $81 million on an intersection at Rio. That once a bypass is built, will be all local traffic, and it will be nothing but a headache for people to have it there. In addition, we haven't talked at all about construction easements, temporary construction easements. I get that you're claiming the road can actually go over the existing road, but that doesn't account for where all the equipment and everything else is going to go while that's being built, as well as temporary roads. And we have to keep flow going, and that's a federal highway requirement, so those have to go somewhere too.
Sure.
And I would just say that the impact on local businesses while that's going on for 6 to 10 years, I don't know how long this would take to build, but
Not
5 years?
hardly 10 years.
4 years?
Not hardly.
However long it would take to get done, it probably wouldn't be worth it once we had a bypass when all the through traffic would be on a bypass.
I think the presumption of a bypass is a very rebuttable presumption. I understand the interests that you're representing. I've read Tim's memos more times than I care to. I think they are doing what they need to do to represent who you represent. I just don't agree at all. I think that being afraid is going to condemn the constituencies that the Chamber of Commerce has an obligation to represent. I respect your opinion, but it's not going to sway me because I just think it is terribly wrong and short-sighted.
As with my MPO hat on, this is on the MPO long-range transportation plan, and I'm not opposing it with the MPO. Putting on my turban. I know that his concern in this area about the interchange and why he has opposed it has a lot to do with businesses, but also with the design and the how it works visually, and he's a designer and a planner.
Yes.
And so instead of planted median and kind of a green space, you end up with a tunnel.
Yes.
For people coming in. So I just wanted to express that.
Well, I do think that's part of what we looked at a little bit is how do you avoid that? And we know it can
But
be.
I hope it can be as
We know it
meaningful as
can be
possible.
avoided. And Christina, I think the businesses have to be involved in how it's delivered. Contractors, and what we've talked about in VDOT is the way I would see this being delivered is not VDOT being overly prescriptive, but say, this is the outcome that we want. We know where we want to go, and let's get input from the contracting industry more through a design-build type procurement that says, here's how this can be delivered. But until you get there, does there need to be some construction staging areas? Well, yeah, but that doesn't spell doom. Does there need to be some sequencing of traffic? Sure. It's a very different project. But when Springfield Interchange was developed, it was developed with a demand that you could never reduce the number of lanes of traffic from what was available before construction started. And I'm not holding that project up as a model, but in terms of meeting that requirement, VDOT and the contractors met that requirement. And that requirement can be met here, not without, I wouldn't tell you without a bad day. I mean, somebody's going to feel a little rough at some point because you can't just drop it in. But this is something that can be delivered with minimal disruption. It can be delivered effectively, and I think in a very reasonable amount of time because you know where you're working. You've got a pretty defined construction limit there.
So,
yes.
is there anything in your recommendation dealing with timing, what comes first? We talked about that last medium or parallel roads or?
Yeah, well, I think that, no, there's not at the moment. But I think logically, if you look at these projects that are already in the 6-year program, it's logical to fund those and pull that funding up. In the current draft 6-year program, some of that funding is out in the last 2 years. I'm pretty sure I'll be recommending to the CTD that that funding be pulled up in the first 2 years. A project like Rio, remember, these projects, they have to start. So there's still a lot of work to be done to develop those through the preliminary engineering phase and working up to the point where you could deliver a project for construction. I think they can all fit in to at least getting started in a 5-year window. But I may spend a little more time between now and Tuesday thinking about that sequence. But I would not, for example, say, well, let's wait on what takes the longest and then do everything else. That just doesn't. Sure.
Number of
And then Fred.
things, since we're my hand up have increased. First of all, you mentioned this, but I really want to underscore this. I don't think it is all inevitable, or this group has at least accepted, or I certainly have accepted, a bypass of some sort is to be presumed to happen, and therefore, is some of this going to be redundant or not necessary? I think if you look at the carefully developed sequence of improvements that have been worked on for 2 decades in this community, I think the numbers show that there's a very good chance that this will take care of the traffic in this corridor. If you have a balanced, multifaceted approach, which your solutions obviously picks up a lot of things that the county and the MPO and the VDOT have developed over the years. So I just disagree with that as a premise. I don't think that it's at all inevitable that there'll be a bypass of any length, let alone 50 some miles or whatever. But I think that, so if we can put that aside and focus on what's here, the 2 things I wanted to talk about a little more was Rio. I do think that if you look at the numbers for through traffic, for local traffic, you've got to address the congestion there. I understand the business community's concern. I think that, as you stressed, a lot's going to depend on how it's implemented, but I don't see how we can turn our back on that one. I think Ed had a good point, although I would spread it out a little bit in time for what I think you were suggesting. I think building Rio is going to help people see that this isn't the end of the world, and that it will therefore help with hydraulic. I think we've also ultimately got to have a great separating interchange with hydraulic. You look at the numbers, you look at the level of service. There's just, it's going to happen sooner or later. I think, given the challenges with hydraulic, that later is okay. I'm glad to see that there's preliminary engineering that you're talking about, so that we don't let that fall off the table. But having been involved in the debate on improving 29 for 20 years, I can tell you, just trying to put hydraulic and Rio in both, I'm afraid will sink the whole ship. I do think that a really good point, though, that I think we will learn and people will have some of their fears reduced if Rio is built properly, like I think it can be. So I think that's why the sequencing is really important, both on the interchanges. I also think it's important, and I urge you to put it in your recommendation, in terms of the local sequencing and building some of this network ahead of the interchange, because that is something that was talked about and modeled for a number of years. And part of the reason for BRCMAR actually is to help with traffic when you're building the interchanges. So we need those local alternatives, because I think that's going to be how some of the local traffic is going to avoid the construction zone. I also think it's going to be how some of the through traffic can avoid the construction zone. So I think that the sequencing is a really important piece of this, and I think that would be something for the CTV to really understand. And Other thing in terms of Burtmore, I understand the concern about it being built over time. Actually, I share that concern. I would like to see us think about either or both designating some or all of Burtmore as a limited access facility from the get-go and taking it a little bit out of the hands of the locality. As the state has done with some roads elsewhere. You get into some questions about classification of the road and where, I mean, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, but I think it's something that takes further analysis, because I think Fred, Ed, Turner have all made the point, and I think it's a good one. You don't want that road to junk up like so many other roads we've built over time have and lose its functionality. I do think that there are ways to address that either by designating it as limited access, and the state therefore condemn some access rights in the course of building this, and taking it a little bit out of the hands to be consistent with what the county does today. As people have pointed out, who knows what it might be like 20 years from now. The other thing is, I think there's some things that possibly we could think about in the design that might make it more difficult, but I think the first possibility of limited access designation should be explored, or at least partial limited access designation. I know that it's been looked at with some other facilities that are planned elsewhere in Virginia.
Route 17.
17, proposed by County Parkway, which is one of my favorite projects, but it has been proposed to make part of that, not the entire facility, limited access. So I know it has been discussed, and I think it is possible, and I would urge that to be part of what you're thinking about. The final piece that was mentioned that really left out of me in this package was what happened to the transit. It was in all of the four models packages that we've seen throughout, and then it vanished. I heard what you said about that. It is something that has been part of the discussion for quite a while here, and modeled, and I would urge you to think further about that, and if it doesn't get in this package, maybe it'll be in the very next one, but I think it's been thought about quite a bit, and I think it's an important piece of this. And that even if you don't ultimately include it in your recommendations for this funding, which I would hope you would, but even if you don't, I would hope you would make some additional recommendations beyond just how the money would be spent. What are some things that should be done next? The other thing you mentioned, which I also support, and I know is of importance to people, especially worried about the through traffic, is the examination of some of those left turn movements. I think that some of those lights can be eliminated, and through and local traffic both. I think that's something that should be part of your recommendations, if not funded, because I agree with you, that requires some further analysis than what we've been able to do in the time we have. But I think the CTB should hear that as part of the overall package, even if you're not saying funded today.
And this does eliminate one extra lane, right? The one just south of Rio.
It would, the first one south of Rio at Fashion Square Mall. The other entrance would still be there. There are four.
There's one light there and there's a light at Rio.
Yeah, so there's currently two on 29 at Fashion Square, two on Rio. One would become right in, right out. That's the one about here in the picture. Yes. Turner? Yes, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate what you were saying, but that's more consistent with what I was thinking of as far as the left turn movements and what we said really at the first meeting. So, when we first got together, we labeled our success factors, our solutions for those success factors, and then in the second meeting, we came back. We had the technical team looked at those success factors and put together a chart that I think you have built is somewhat infamous now. But that chart showed that the high-level through-lane model met all the success factors, that the low-build model met a little bit less. The parallel roads concept, which is already funded, met less than half of them. I want to say 3 out of the 8. And the higher build concept, the high build concept of parallel roads, well, it met more than that. So what happened, because it seems like we've gone from looking at a solution that met our success, the majority of our success factors, 180 degrees in 2 meetings to a solution that doesn't meet half of them. I'm just surprised we got there from here.
I think that when we looked at that, and you actually pointed it out, Turner, the implements report card,
That was the yes/no report.
there were those of us that actually live here and MPO reports took exception to where the dots all fell. So objectively, yes, you saw that and it had dots all the way down on that expressway, but there were dots missing, we thought, on the parallel road concept, particularly when you added intersection treatments. So in fact, that's why I asked, is this going to be shown to the CTV? Because I just didn't think it was an accurate portrayal of all the solutions. No offense to everybody that was involved in putting that together. I don't want to, like Kristen earlier, I don't want to change what direction you want to go in. I wanted to ask something. I think that in our experience of working with a business community, what business likes is certainty. And even if there are adverse conditions for a period of time, a recession or something else, sometimes the certainty allows businesses to carry on and then eventually to really thrive again. Our county, Albemarle County, has been researching ways that we can assist our businesses should there be widening of 29, which was painful the last time, or one thing that the business community is very concerned about is intersection treatments at Rio and hydraulic. So it intrigued me that you said, VDOT can do this well. You've added extra money to make Rio a good example of what can be done there. And you've said, we don't know each other, so I don't know what business you're in, but you've said that this can be done well. And so I'm hoping that we don't have to spend panel time now, but we need help to really put this together well, and it can't just be, it can't just be VDOT that's doing it. We know the community has to do it too.
It won't be painless, but to at least minimize that pain as much as possible.
Yeah. The yes/no chart, I felt served our purpose to get us to the floor. Because if you change the yeses or nos, I think we still ended up with those floors. There are some people that think we're irresponsible for considering the expressway options, that we shouldn't be talking about them. I felt that was not wise and short-sighted. I mean, we can't just talk about things that we can't dumb everything down to the middle. I believe we've given the expressway and the non-expressway options a pretty fair shake. As it's been in the back of my mind, but I mentioned it, I think at the beginning of the last meeting, that we want to come out with something that we can implement, that we can do. If the MPO goes and the CTV goes, we look at VDOT, say, you got to deliver. And to deliver in this corridor with the business community, you don't want to have a panel meeting after something went wrong. You want to start this way, which VDOT has done, and I know that that's been done in a lot of other places in other states where you slowly can calm. I use the word fear, anxiety. I mean, if you're a business owner, building light rail through downtown Norfolk is an example of a project that got started in a way that was not good for business. And when you're trying to catch that on the back end, man, it's not pretty. It's not fun for anyone. So the chamber, the business community, the individual owners are going to have to be engaged and be part of the process. what I found most of the time mirrors closely to what you said. And it's just tell me, and then do what you told me. You know, so I can be certain that between this week and that week, or whatever it's going to be, that I know I can prepare for it, and then do what you told me. And that can go a long way. If we just looked at numbers, if we just looked at things the way we were kind of trained to look at them, we'd do hydraulic first. We'd say, well, that's got to be the one you do first. But some of those methods don't work anymore, and you look at these two, and you know that they both need to be done. I mean, there's just no question that they both need to. There's more than just those two that are going to need to be done at some point in the future. And then you look at where the community is, for me, where the community is at this point in time, and what seems to be doable is right. And I'm really glad to hear folks who have said that, yeah, let's take a look at hydraulic. And that's what this box says. Let's take a look at that and see what we find out. And we can be doing that also in a room like this with people involved and engaged at the earliest point in time to help put some thoughts and concepts together. You know, Tripp, and I'm going to think about all the things you said. The secretary said, well, if you want an extra $20 or $25 million, it's hard for me to do that. I think I'm such a pain in the rear, on time, on budget person that writing down 203 was hard for me, because it's a lot of money. I mean, like, it's not just, well, okay, here, let's pitch another 20 at it. It's a lot of money. It's your money. And I do think it may be wise to think about some things outside of this package that should continue to be thought about, and how you designate the roadway, how you apply access management. I also think personally that it's important to suture the wound and get rid of this right away. And that's going to produce some amount of money that perhaps can be available. I just don't believe I think the value that once was in that right away is passed us by.
And you paid premium value for it, too.
And it's not going to come back.
Only $50 million.
It's not going to be 50 coming back. But anyway, yes.
Talking about looking outside, as Tripp had some other things that I've heard about also, but we really haven't discussed here. And one thing we've all talked about at each meeting, I think, at least outside, and it's good for Charlottesville also, is again, it's a responsibility of everybody that's on this panel to try to, certainly try to help what's here now, but also we've got to look down the road, which is good for everybody above and below the corridor, particularly Charlottesville, is funds set aside to, do studies, and I won't say the word.
Yeah, no, I know.
Look at other solutions, because it's inevitable.
Yeah.
We do this
Yeah.
with the university's growth and Charlottesville's growth,
Right.
and you do some of this work, it's only going to you're going to grow, and you want to grow.
Yeah.
So we've got to, there's money, however you want to do it relative to look at another bypass or other alternatives that I know are out there. Is that money available? Is it already in the coffer somewhere, or does it need to be set up now for the future?
You're talking about corridor study or back?
Or other studies that Tripp bringing up, or other bypass studies.
Right.
In other words, put money in the system to look at this it's gonna be it's gotta be addressed later at some point, to move around Charlottesville to get out of this, as this place grows. So is the money there now?
Part of the funding from the sale of the right of way for that.
It could.
That's directly.
It could. It could.
So I'm just saying, you gotta get.
VDOT has a fiduciary responsibility to continue to plan for the management and growth of its system. And VDOT has a planning budget, the district has a planning budget, and where I sort of came down on that issue coming into this meeting is that that money's there, and VDOT has a responsibility
So
to
you're saying it's already there?
saying that there's a few $1 billion in the 6-year program, and I don't remember what VDOT's operating budget is these days, but money is there for long-range planning. And,
Good enough.
it should
I know,
be,
we talk about every meeting, we keep getting it up.
yeah, no, I know.
Holding
I know.
3% of the 200 million
Yeah.
and all that, so, again, it's good for this area, and then it's good for everybody above and below at some point. I certainly a way later day.
Let me,
I was just going to say on that, I think that's something that, my guess is at some point down the road, there will be additional studies for what you do to this corridor, whether it's improvements to the
Yeah.
corridor or the bypass. But I would say, I was never a fan of putting any of this 200 million aside for it, because we got to see what all this does before that study makes any sense. I mean, the whole point of all this is to buy us possibly decades before we would need to have that discussion.
this corridor, with an alternative route for through traffic, this corridor needs to be addressed. I believe. I believe. My advice to Charlottesville and business would be, regardless of what else happens, this corridor needs to be addressed. This corridor has issues with mobility that can be addressed. They can be addressed reasonably, and well, definitely, nothing gets easier later. Nothing gets easier later. They can be addressed. They can be addressed meaningfully and in a considerable way, by considerate way, I guess I should say, not considerable, in a considered way that includes the proper constituencies around the table. I'm going to ask you a tough question. The secretary said we're not going to vote. I mean, and he made that point to me a couple of times. I'm not looking for you to take a vote. I'm not looking for you to find consensus. I want you to listen, and I want your opinion. It would be wonderful. Well, wonderful is right. It would be nice. It would be nice if, and I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, trust me, I'm really not. It would be nice to be able to say that while there are differences, this recommendation has support of the panel. That's nothing I would presume to say on my own. And I know there are tough issues. There are tough issues on both sides. I mean, there's tough issues for Christina, there's tough issues for the folks from the South. And while I understand that you could say it's a quarter of national statewide significance, yes it is. It's a U.S. route, yes it is. And the law requires the Charlottesville-Albemarle Regional MPO to include it in their fiscally constrained long-range plan. That's just the way it goes, and that's to no slight of the friends to the south or to the north. Just simply the way it has to work. Maybe I'll call you. Maybe you could let me know between now and Tuesday if you feel so inclined. I think if I could look at that CTB and say, this isn't just me, that there's some support support from the panel, it would be nice to say. I'm also happy to say there's some serious disagreement with a few of these points. The fact that there's disagreement is unlikely to change what I would recommend. I don't know why it would. It's not to say I'm not listening, but just the fact that there's some disagreement is not likely to change. I would just ask you to think about that. The CTB meetings are open to the public. If there's an alternative option or a point that you want me to make, I'm happy to make it. I'm happy to say that there are some that believe both grade separations should happen. That hydraulic is more important than RIO. And I'm happy to say there's some who just think we shouldn't do anything in the corridor. I don't mean to misrepresent your all's opinions, and I respect them all. I respect them. I think that whatever happened, that these folks are the ones that ended up around this table, has been fortuitous, because we could have ended up with, well, we're fighting, 3 people left, didn't come back. I mean, we've all seen situations like this go pretty far south, not to use south as a but to go very badly. And we've been able to not let that happen. I'm not trying to cut the meeting off. I just want to remind, in case there was some confusion, Mr. Sheffield was first to point out to me that, hey, you said 10 o'clock May the 13th, and the website says 2 o'clock, and it was about 5 minutes after I found out that the meeting had been changed. So the May CTB workshop is at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock at the DoubleTree on Tuesday, May the 13th. And that's the CTB's workshop. And I'll make a recommendation there. There won't be any action on the recommendation in May. But, yes, Kristen.
There will be some new members in June.
Yes. I believe they'll be in May.
I think it'd be important if they're going to be making this decision to be part of that.
And then in June, the plan is that in June, the CTB would be presented with a resolution at their action meeting, and I think that's on the 18th in Richmond. The June meeting is in Richmond. They would be presented with a resolution. You can go ahead and get that off, Ken. They would be presented with a resolution at the June meeting to adopt, which is important because that affects the funding in the 6-year program for the projects that as we've described. So that's the general game plan there for the meeting. I would encourage you to attend if you can attend at 2 o'clock. I would encourage you to attend not only the workshop, but the June meeting as well. I know that the CTB is going to have a lot to think about as they're putting the 6-year program together. So our part is, $200 million is a lot of money. It's a little piece of a great big decision that they have to make. Mrs. Thomas, the fact that, you've taken time to be here for each one of these meetings, I think is a real nod to your attention to your responsibility as a CTB member, and I'm glad you. We can talk about more, or we can wrap up. Fred?
I I had these questions earlier, so they're a little bit out of sync.
Okay.
I'd like to go back to it. On Burkmore, is that on the 6-year plan? I looked back through my notes, I couldn't find it.
Burkmar is in the constrained long-range plan as an illustrative project. If you look at that, well, you know,
Bridge at Burkmar.
the bridge is in, yes.
And that was
yes.
my second question, is how much is the bridge itself? The whole project is 59?
Oh, the whole project was 54.
Okay.
I don't recall how much the bridge was.
20.
20.
And then the next question I had was about the expressway that will be part of this recommendation. How will that transition before and after? In other words, we're not doing anything at the hydraulic
Right.
intersection. So where would it transition? How would it transition?
It would transition from the, flip back to,
First one.
yeah, the first one. The first, ring. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It would transition from the existing configuration through this area into the through traffic, and then go to the next one, carrying the local traffic up to the grade separated intersection.
So it'll only be,
And then it's going to do the same thing on the other end.
okay, so it'll be 4 or 5 blocks each way?
Suburban lines.
2 or 3 blocks? 2 or 3 blocks
Yeah,
each way.
yeah.
And the last question, or could we go back to the initial slide?
Go back one.
I'm sorry,
That
the
one?
map, the map,
Okay.
right there.
Yeah, that.
You know, there was some agreement that I felt along with the comments with regard to what Burkmar is doing with regard to helping out during construction of Rye. And what I thought of when I heard that was that really makes, that part of Burkmar I kind of could go along with. The question is it, the bridge crossings, what I'm concerned about, the 21. Your plan, or what you're going to carry forward, is already widening the Ravenna, everything north of the Ravenna.
On 29?
Right. And then my question is, would it be worth any further consideration as far as not building the north part of Burkmar and coming off on the south side of the river to get on the Burkmar to offer that during construction, to offer that as a kind of a stage part of Burkmar, but also offer that as a solution during construction for the Ryan intersection?
Because your bridge is going to take so long to build it.
Right.
Get Ryan.
Well, are you talking more about sequencing or both?
Both.
That's your stopgap. It doesn't help you at Ryan because it's going to take so
I'm
long.
still-
to
I'm still-
design and then build that bridge.
Yeah.
I'm still, and the reason why I keep going back to this, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I'm still bothered by, from Best Buy intersection
Uh-huh.
through hydraulic, nothing really is getting accomplished. If any of that money could go ahead and be used to get the project through hydraulic and Ryan, maybe not at the same time, but in part of this project as a phased project, and I would feel a whole lot more comfortable. And, you know, you've noted, well, you said there's 21 million there on that bridge, and then there's going to be some money on the north side of the Ravenna. There's also, as much as you don't want to go there, there's also a $20 million possibility of some other contribution. So you're already paying for there's money there to pay for hydraulic.
One thing is that the Hillsdale actually does do some bypassing of the hydraulic intersection.
That one totally makes sense. But I'm still,
That's a good compromise.
you're still leaving a gap between Best Buy intersection and Ryan that is not, I don't think.
The worst area.
Yeah,
Well,
Hillsdale already goes on park.
10 million to begin to look at it is not a zero gap, I guess. I mean, if,
You're just trying to get you there faster.
no, I understand. I'm just trying to get there.
It's a great compromise.
I'm trying to get there.
Well, the MBO is just not going to support it. So, yeah, I guess you got to beat your head off the wall.
City council.
I want to see Rio get delivered.
Me too.
I want to see Rio get delivered. I would, from a transportation, mobility point of view, I would like to see a time when hydraulic can be delivered. But you got to prove yourself. And I hear agreement around Rio. You know, we got to deliver it. And it's got to be delivered. It's got to be delivered sensitively and sensibly. And I'm confident it can be. I think Berkmar has been an important part of planning in the area, and I'm comfortable with funding it fully. If there's a strong desire to do otherwise, listen to it, certainly.
Now, one thing, it's a small item, because I know we got to focus on, the bridges and the hydraulics are the tough ones for you guys. That's obviously been clear. But, stoplight synchronization can go right away.
Yeah.
Back at Tripp's point, that's something that can be done right away with the technology that's in place now. You can do something with that.
Yes.
Now, back to Tripp's point, it's really critical, and these guys probably have already done it, y'all have already done it, but the timing to help Rio, like getting Hillsdale going and finish that so that there's steps that help make Rio go much easier.
Yes.
It'll be a lot less painless. And begin to prove to everybody that, you can do it. And I thought Fred's backing down, kind of backing down to get the money, at least for consideration as another proposal. But I'm sure you've probably already been this route. But anyway, that was a great way to create the money for hydraulic, which is a bear.
We've got 10 in here.
I got it.
We've got 10 in. And it's a healthy, it's a healthy stuff. It's a healthy stuff. Christina, what would you suggest what would you suggest as a method of involving members, your constituents, for Riot?
Well, we could invite them to some of these public meetings. They certainly could go. I know that North Charlottesville Business Council will probably be very interested in attending that. And other than the interchange, I think the plan is great. And I'm not opposed to looking at the left turn issue as well. It's not that I don't want anything to be done on 29. That's certainly not the case. It's just the interchange concept that has been brought forward from the beginning that I have some heartburn about, or especially the chamber has some heartburn about. There's not really much to be done about that. It just is what it is. So.
I do think that you should, you mentioned this in your comments at the beginning, to some recommendations beyond just dollar figure recommendations. I do think that a recommendation about and getting the CTV to recognize how important execution is going to be on this, but also the engagement of stakeholders.
Oh, absolutely.
Early and often.
Absolutely.
I think is
Absolutely.
But I think it never hurts to have that be part of your recommendation.
Oh, you can count on it.
So
You can count it. I am not going to discard the various interests that have been brought up here and the importance of engagement.
Yeah, I would second that. I think that this community really expects very high levels of community
Yeah.
engagement. People participate, as you saw by how many folks were watching us
Yeah.
online here.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be huge. You can never, as we see in this room right here, you can never make everyone happy.
Right.
When people have different
Right.
needs and different
Right.
perspectives. And I will just ask one thing that I, give with Mike, you can take with whatever grain of salt
Sure.
he likes. But I really, since you've managed to emotionally get yourself over the 200 to 203, if you could just go
Pretty hard.
round it up to
Kinda like my hydraulic.
5, yeah. I would still love to see transit in here. I think that if you have a bus that's going frequently, it's, not taking on a huge amount of traffic, but it does set the kind of pace for us to be able to expand transit later, which I think could ultimately give us a lot of decongestion on this route, sort of like a placeholder that the train has. So I would just, I can live with this the way it is, and I really do appreciate the kind of the nod to the local planning process. But I think the local planning process is hugely dependent on transit, and I think that I would just like to see, because it is a very small amount. I mean, it's a huge amount if you're thinking about how much I have in the bank account, but it's a small amount in perspective of this whole project.
Where people, if they're able to, if they're of the mind to and able to comment, of course, people should comment how they want to. It would be most helpful, I believe, if comment could be what needs to be done to deliver things properly. Speaking for myself, not for anyone else, I think when it's, I say yes, you say no, I think those comments tend to drift past ears more quickly than comments that say, look, here's what we expect. We want to know where this is going to take place and how long it's going to take and how you're going to do it. We want to be involved. We want to be involved not just one time to say we were involved, but we want to be engaged and involved actively. So I look forward to those kinds of thoughts being shared with the city, the county, the state, and the CTD. Well, this is our last meeting, and I have learned so much from this myself. I've learned just a tremendous amount about the value of engagement. And, I'm part of the group that grew up where we ran a lot of numbers and we kind of knew the answer, right? Based on those numbers. And the most challenging part of delivering a lot of projects early in my career were the physical challenges. Even money wasn't much of a challenge because it was kind of falling out of the sky, man, wherever you could get it in, late 60s and 70s. In the late 60s and 70s, we were always pretty relaxed for other reasons. But these physical challenges were tremendous. And, in the last half of my career, it's the social challenge, getting buy-in as we stopped building out away from everybody and found that we've really got to pay attention to the real estate that we have and how to use it most effectively in built-up areas. The social challenges are, as they should be, are just incredible. And in social, I include environmental and economic and all the things that come along with that, and how do you do it safely so that everybody that comes to work goes home at the end of the day. These things are tougher because they don't come out of a formula. And they present you with a lot of opportunities to learn. So before we wrap up, I want to thank you for the opportunity that you've given me to learn, and Clinton, the opportunity that you've given me to learn by being part of this. Kristen,
Sir?
any final?
I really especially appreciate the people who travel to come here. I know that this is, this process has decades of history, and to continue to engage, I appreciate it.
Fred?
It's been a pleasure meeting everyone. Enjoyed serving with you. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Trip?
Thanks to all the people who've been involved, the technical folks, and you for running this, and also to the Secretary for setting this whole thing in motion and the tenor of it. Having worked on this for as long as I have, I'm not surprised that differences remain. We've covered a lot of ground, and I think very well in a short time. And I think that this is a compromise between kind of the through and the parallel road approaches. But on the whole, I think it's a good one. There's some things that I'd like to see different, but on the whole, I think this is going to help us, and now we need to move forward.
Turner?
Thank you. With all respect to our colleagues here and the amount of time and effort spent by VDOT and you, Philip, I have to admit that this process has been a bit of a disappointment. Even though the dialogue and the professionalism were very much appreciated by everybody, I still feel as though Lynchburg is being paid lip service by the Charlottesville MPO. Our comments were welcome, but they were neither needed nor heeded. We started a year ago with a win-win. Regional US 29 travelers were happy to have a bypass, and local business organizations were happy to have a Route 29 business solution. Now we have solutions that apparently the business community does not appear to endorse, and will not significantly improve either congestion or mobility through the corridor. It may be a start, but this group has failed the broader charge to improve mobility. The solution is significantly different from a bypass. Of the initial $250 million designated for the through traffic, which would increase mobility and decrease congestion through the US 29 corridor, $50 million worth of taxpayer funds were wasted. This is a disgrace for our Commonwealth. The bulk of the remaining $200 million will be spent on local streets, not for the larger benefit of the Commonwealth and the regional traffic. I can't help but think that if these projects are so important, then why weren't they funded a decade ago? Clearly, the apparent availability of resources changes local priorities. Despite the value of the publicly open process, which I think was significant, it's easy for me to believe that my time here could have been better spent. I did enjoy meeting all of you and hearing all of your opinions and how this impacts Charlottesville and Albemarle area. I just wish that we had developed a larger regional solution. Philip, I wanted to sincerely thank you on behalf of the citizens of Lynchburg for all your efforts in this endeavor.
Ed?
Well, I've enjoyed meeting everybody as well. I think you've had a tough task and done a good job, and I think the NPO, y'all got quite a bit more work ahead of you, and I wish you the best to focus on the congestion we have here.
Christina?
I've really enjoyed getting to know all the panelists, and I appreciate everyone's views, and I think everyone was very well spoken and definitely opened my eyes to some things that I hadn't heard before. I would agree with Turner that I'm very disappointed about the bypass. The business community here supported a bypass, the chamber supported a bypass. I think that was a much longer term solution to this issue. I can say that we support the majority of this plan, just not the interchange at Rio. But I have enjoyed being here, and that we've all, had our chance to say how we feel about this. Differing of opinions aside, I really did enjoy getting to know them.
And we managed to get you elected mayor.
I've really enjoyed this. It's been an educational process. I know more about the roads in Charlottesville than
And in your neighborhood.
I know all the shortcuts. But I think it's been a very productive process. I believe this is a good compromise. We're dealing with realities of how it's going to affect businesses, the political realities of what the community will accept. I think when the Rhino thing is built, I think the community is going to think, wow, this is pretty cool. But stealing Turner's word. And I think it'll open up the door for more of this. I do believe it is going to help people from the north get into Charlottesville and 250, having these improvements. So I applaud the committee for working. Philip and everybody else has struggled to pull this together.
Jane?
I thought it was really good to have our chambers represented. It's easy for us who are elected officials to feel like we represent our business communities because they're so important to us. But to be able to have articulation from people whose constituency is business, I thought was really far-sighted, and I really appreciate it. And like everyone else said, I really enjoyed meeting all of you that are not from our community. I don't blame Fred, Turner, Ed for being show me, don't tell me. And I think, not being Pollyannish, that once this is done, that you guys are going to owe us guys lunch. But if that's not true,
I'll be happy to buy it.
and if it's not, we'll come down and take you off. I think you did a masterful job facilitating different viewpoints to come to something that you feel comfortable presenting. I thought it was important. I picked up on what you said about the top square being easier, but if we only did that, we were really doing our job for South and also the long-term steward.
Oh, if we only did this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to go down to these other boxes.
Yeah.
Thought it was creative to look at the train, and so I think that's going to be interesting too. So all in all, my time was very well spent, although I'm very glad not to have any more meetings. And I appreciate all the expertise that, aside from my comment on that report card, I appreciate the expertise.
I had some comments on the report card too.
Yes.
Well, thanks again to the Research Council for hosting us. They had a 2-day training exercise for some person that they paid. It was supposed to be conducted in here today, and they relocated so that we could be here again. This building means a lot to me for a whole lot of different reasons, so I was happy to have these meetings here. And also, I'd like to thank the folks that traveled. I know that was not where we started initially, and appreciate the people that took their time to travel here. Appreciate everyone who took time to come and visit us personally, or watch on video, or catch the rerun on the podcast. Thanks to everybody. Ben, you're not finished yet, but thank you for taking a lot of grief and really keeping the team focused. Ben's team, Chuck Proctor, Paul Prideaux, Susan, were just incredible. Ken, thanks for being a link between us and the rest of the public, and for everything that you did. Once you start thanking people, you always leave somebody out, so we'll just cut it there. And I'll see you in Charlottesville on Tuesday, May the 13th. Thank you very much.
Yeah,